Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the City of Farmers Branch study session meeting. It is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. It is Groundhog's Day. I didn't see the shadow, or figure out what Puxatawny Phil did, so I have no idea. Couldn't update you, but hopefully it's only 3 more weeks of winter. We will begin with A1, discuss regular agenda items. Councilmember Atana, do you have anything to discuss?
No, sir.
Councilmember Norwood?
No.
Councilmember Lynn? Councilmember Baumgartner?
No.
I have none as well. Councilmember Driscoll is not with us yet, so we'll have to get that later. A2, receive a report regarding the feasibility of a mulching operation at Camelot Landfill. Mr. Davis.
Councilman Driscoll, can you see the presentation?
I only see right now.
Okay. Oh, I may have unshared it, my fault.
Okay, so he's supposed to share the screen, not the presentation.
Here.
And then, now it's hiding over there. Any presentation.
No, okay.
I've got it now.
User error, my apologies. Shane Davis, Director of Sustainability and Public Health, City of Farmers Branch. So before we jump into the meat of this, just to give a couple of y'all the background on landfills in the area and the state real quick. I know Councilmember Driscoll is new to the council, so I'm gonna walk through this real quickly just to give you a little bit of background on landfills. So Camelot Landfill is a type 1 landfill. A type 1 landfill is a typical municipal solid waste landfill. So it takes most of the things the city or residents throw away. It does not accept hazardous waste. The unique thing with Camelot Landfill is we share our eastern property boundaries, also the city limit line between Carrollton and Louisville. Oops, sorry. And based on the 2019 TCEQ, they do a report every year that's the state of solid waste in Texas. There's 95 type 1 landfills in the state of Texas, 18 in the north central Texas Council of Governments region, which we're located in. And there's about 7.8 million residents in that region per the report. So with landfills, some of them are owned by cities, some are owned by private companies, some, in our case, like ours, are owned by cities but operated by private companies. So jump into some of the meat and more details about Camelot. So every year, landfills have to submit what's called an annual report. And that's your snapshot of the year. What did you take in? How was your density? So what you're showing here on your screen is the figures from our 2020 annual report. So in the annual report, again, it's the type of waste you take. How much of that type of waste did you take in? You got your beginning airspace available. How much did you consume or use? And what was your operational density? That's how much stuff did you pack into a cubic yard of airspace. You can think of a landfill as a warehouse. Once you fill that warehouse up, you're out of business and you move on. So this remaining life in years, some of you'll see that number in the end reports go way up. If we take a lot of material next year, you may see it go way down. What it does, it takes what you took in that given year and assumes that for the rest of the landfill life. So that number fluctuates a lot, which causes some people concern when you look at the report every year. So that's why it says 44.7 years. That was based on our density this past year and the amount of airspace consumed. How do you reduce the life of a landfill? Well, it's pretty much 2 ways. One, you limit how much stuff you take into the landfill, or you increase the compaction. I'll say Republic places a very strong emphasis on increasing compaction. If you go out there, I could not be a compactor operator. They're very boring. You do nothing but drive back and forth over the trash, which basically is a very heavy piece of equipment with these spiky wheels. And the whole point is it compacts things down very densely. The woman's high-heeled shoe stepping on your toe versus someone with an athletic shoe. Kind of get the point. All the pressure is applied to the end of the spikes. That's how they get the compaction. So what we're here today to talk about is one way to limit the amount of waste that comes into landfill, and that's through diversion. If we're to do a mulching program at Camelot Landfill, anytime you make a change to your operating permit, in this case, the mulching operation would be a change, you have to go through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They regulate landfills from the permitting aspect. Because we're only talking about mulching, though, the permitting aspect is not as detailed as what we went through in terms of the landfill expansion. It would be what's called a registration. It's a pretty low-level permitting process. So what are some of the challenges with the mulching operation at Camelot? Well, when you see a picture of the site development plan map, which I'll pull up next, you'll see the place we had called out in the landfill in the site development plan was actually in floodplain. So you'd have to raise that area up out of the floodplain before you could ever use it. To do that, if you just paid a third-party construction cost to go have that done, it's about $300,000 plus, so a pretty big cost there, which was kind of an upfront deterrent. So we said, where else could we put this in the landfill besides this location that would still work? May not be as big, but what could we do out there to maybe move it around a little bit and find an alternate location? So the city's been working with Republic Services, who operates our landfill, and Living Earth Technologies to find a way to make this program work. So we identified a place that's a future waste footprint area, so it's not a long-term solution, because at some point in time, we're going to excavate the soil out of that location and use it for waste footprint. So it means it's a place we're going to dispose of trash in the future. But for the next few years, it does provide a place to get operations up and going if we choose to pursue this, albeit at a limited size and limited capacity. And the site management for that one, in terms of getting it ready, there's some grading required, but nothing extensive. Not like taking 10 acres out of the floodplain and raising it up several feet. The other thing out there, whenever you do a composting or mulching operation, is you're probably going to need a structure, someplace for someone to determine what's coming into the facility. Anytime you put a structure at the landfill, you go through a full-blown review process with the P&Z and the city council approval with the city of Louisville. We don't get around that if we put a structure on site for the composting or mulching operation. We could have it all go through our scale house, new scale house we have there, but that's going to back up the line for folks coming in to dispose of waste. So in terms of operations, there's a couple of bottlenecks there. One is either putting a structure out there, going through Louisville, or running everything through the scale house we have for the landfill and possibly slowing down the amount of vehicles getting in and out of the site. So here's the map from the site development plan. So again, all that area you see in blue, green color, that's all floodplain. So essentially, Camelot Landfill is an island in the midst of a floodplain. This was very evident if you happen to go out to our site in 2015 when we had the floods. Not many folks realize, but this is what it looked like. Just imagine water, all those places are green and blue, and that's what it looked like in 2015 during that spring. We got hit from both sides. You can see the water comes in from the northeast and also from the river itself. But the area up north, it says wood waste processing. That would be the location we first talked about. That's the one to construct that. It's about $300,000 if you just had a third party do it alone. So this map shows the place we found inside the waste footprint area that would work on a temporary basis. Rectangle may look similar in size, but really the site, when we look at the grading, is not quite as big. But it could work temporarily. You got a nice flow and not going all the way to the working face, so it's pretty close in terms of where the scale house is located. So in terms of logistics, this site would work out pretty well on a short-term basis. What other challenges do we face? Well, this is where you kind of get to the real issue. We kind of work on one of them in terms of the pad, but financial challenges still exist. So the city, in our budget, we have $65,000, which we use to divert brush currently. That's what we budgeted for this past year. Living Earth Technologies at the moment is requiring $35,000 per month guaranteed revenue, so someone would have to pay that. Camelot Landfill TXLP, we're basically asking them to assume all financial risk with this project. So the permitting aspect, plus now they have to come up with $35,000 per month to cover the costs for Living Earth Technologies until there's enough revenue coming in to where it would be self-supporting. Not sure how long that would take to get to that point. Certainly our brush diversion, which has been a great program, is not enough to support that because we don't pay. So there's no revenue that they could recoup from us. Capella has a diversion program. So Republic's looked at what they can do internally that they're already hauling that's brush material. So we've given those numbers to Living Earth, but at the moment it's not enough to cover that 35,000 by any means. So that's the big challenge, is the 35,000 per month. Republic, certainly all three parties think it's the right thing to do. The challenge is local folks don't want to assume a 35,000 per month loss or expenditure, depending on how you want to look at it. Especially unknown how long it's going to take to get to that amount of revenue, so it's a self-supporting operation. So we're a little bit of an impasse in terms of this project at the moment because they don't want to cover that cost. They have margins they got to meet. Local folks are not willing to. That's how they're evaluated in a given year, is the margins. Republic is highly based on margins. They've kept our tipping fee at a higher level than other facilities did in terms of waste disposal. So this is the philosophy they've had all along. So this is where we stand at the moment, is the 35,000 per month, overcoming that hurdle. And right now I don't see one, unless Living Earth was willing to come way down on their monthly revenue guarantee, which I have not heard them speak of yet to date. At this point in time, I'm willing to answer any questions you may have, but that's where we're at.
Okay. Okay. Shane, thank you very much. Councilmember Lynn, I know this is an issue you brought up several times, so I will let you go first.
Thank you, Shane. So I had several questions. While this report did not paint that good of a picture in terms of moving forward, I wanted to find out, can we dictate diversion by other customers that are using the landfill?
Good question. So just like with our hauling contract to CWD, when cities have contracts, unless they pick it up themselves, they have contracts with a private company to haul the material off at a given rate. No one that we've heard of wants to, at this point in time, with the financial aspect a lot of cities are facing and financial challenges, increase the cost to have a diversion program. Can we dictate it? I doubt it, because they have contracts set with each city that provide the parameters and guidelines in terms of what they'll haul and when. So like here, our garbage pickups twice per week if we live on this side of 35. Bulk collections once a month, brushes every week. City of Carrollton, where I lived before, we had garbage once a week in a cart, brush and bulky once a week, and they're recycling once every other week. So they dictate what that contract's going to entail, and then they give you a price for that. So in order to dictate brush diversion, you have to go back and renegotiate every contract to put in a price for the diversion, plus each city would have to go through what we went through with our bulk and brush diversion in terms of redoing the schedule. So I don't really see that happening. Republic operates the gate, so we need the revenue coming in from what we get from those city contracts for residential collection. That'd be a tough ask. Doesn't mean over time it couldn't happen, but certainly not immediately. I can't see that happening. No, sir.
Okay. Are there other partners that might be interested in doing this with us other than Living Earth?
We currently send stuff to Soul Building Systems. So they are another company that does processing. There'd be a little bit of apprehension on my side just based on the current experience we've had. I mean, they're capable of taking the material in, but there's been some challenges we've had to overcome on the billing side. So I'd be a little hesitant just based on my prior experience with them. Could they do it? And they know how to operate a composting or mulching facility, yes.
Okay. Do they get a guarantee like that from Arlington? I think they have a...
They did, but now that's self-supporting, so it got to the point where it can support itself. But up front, yes, that's been a case with every landfill where they've done this with Republic.
So do we know how long it took for them to get to that point?
I can find that out.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I didn't ask how long it took, but...
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yep. They did the same thing at Southeast Landfill at Fort Worth.
Might be worth
Right.
going back and reconsidering. Okay. The last thing I had was a question regarding the expansion.
Yes, sir.
When we went through that. We're now estimating the life of the landfill to be 44 years.
Yeah, that was a snapshot based on this annual report. Yes, sir.
Okay. Prior to that, and when we got the expansion, the number was 25 years. So is this 19.7 year difference, is that a result of us taking less material or some other management aspect?
No, again, it's a snapshot. So you have how much volume airspace did you have before the year started? How much do you have at the end of the year, which tells you how much volume you took in. Then you also get your density. So it's a simple calculation of taking the density and dividing it into the airspace you consumed. And you project that over the remaining amount of airspace you have. And that's how they come with the 44.7 years. So if all of a sudden density went way down, all of a sudden that number would go way down also in terms of the number of years. So if we only got 1,000 pounds per cubic yard, that lifespan was 44 years, would probably drop down to 20. So there's two simple things. Am I overcomplicating this? I see you look, I'm sorry. Okay. So it's a snapshot each year. If you get your density higher, it's always gonna make your life of landfill go longer. But also if you take in less volume and still have really good density, that also makes your landfill life look longer.
Okay, so now, if we look today as stewards of the city, we're supposed to assume 44 years. But let's say 2 years from now, a report comes back and they say, well, no, it's 30 years.
Right.
Or something dramatically less
Right.
than 44.
Right.
Then,
That very well could happen. Like I said, next year we took in, and they're not allowed, let's say they took in twice the amount of volume as this year. I kept the density the same, now that 44 years is gonna drop dramatically because the volume went up higher.
okay. All right.
So it could vary from year to year. At one point in time, there's a C&D landfill in Louisville that went from 35 years to 100 years. They took in so little volume, but the density stayed the same. So they take in how much volume, they assume that's the same volume going to take in each year for the rest of the life of the landfill. So again, it's a snapshot. You want to take these with a grain of salt when you look at that lifespan. Those can change very quickly based on annual reports.
Well, I still believe that this is important to the future of the landfill, life of the landfill, and I guess I'm going to leave this with you to try to hopefully find a way to get to a more workable solution. I don't want to get in a situation where we're necessarily guaranteeing money for a private vendor.
Understood.
I don't think that's a good business to be in. But I do believe that this would benefit the long-term life of the landfill. And, maybe if we have to look at other operators to come in and at least get some type of bid or something from them, that might be worthwhile.
I understand the position, and we'll continue to look at that for sure over time.
Charles, you had a comment?
Yes, I just want to point out real quickly that when we talk about density, and I realize the numbers have changed dramatically, as Shane has noted, I want to explain further about density. Remember, density is kind of a factor of your efficiency in operating a landfill. And so that takes into account, like when waste comes in, how well you compact it. Also, the type and quality of your cover, whether it be soil or whether it be a thinner or a liquid system of cover, which we don't want to use that liquid, but there's, and then the gas collection system to some degree creates more density. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of what density actually means, because I hear what you're saying, that, my gosh, this is a dramatic change in years. It is. But, the hope is over time that your operator continues to develop an efficiency in terms of creating more and more density, because ultimately that will allow you to have more waste over the life of that landfill. And so, we can make some assumptions when we're looking at kind of a broader pro forma of landfill, we could say, okay, are they always going to have this efficient level? Yes or no. And so what we do absolutely know is that once a year we have a flyover that's required as part of our contract, where as of that point in time, every fall, we know exactly what the remaining life is if they continue at the existing efficiency level. So that's why you're seeing this swing. It could swing back the other way, but the hope is, and one thing that Shane oversees, is to make sure they continue efficient standards and maintain that efficiency.
And our contract does have a minimum density they have to meet. So they couldn't just totally crater and not compact at all. That's one of our conditions of the contract. You will maintain a certain threshold of density.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that, are there any additional incentives for Republic to extend the life of the landfill and manage this better?
Oh yes. Yeah, Republic, I mean, Republic is a private company. They want to make a profit. We are a government that would love to continue the royalties that we receive from the landfill. So we both have an interest in maintaining or lengthening the life of that landfill as long as we possibly have, especially given that they're really in the northern Metroplex area. There's not competition. So there's just some kind of built-in push to draw out the length of that landfill is most possible. And we've met with the operators and made sure that they're aware that we don't feel like we want to be the loss leaders in the Metroplex. That if it came down to filling up the landfill tomorrow or maintaining a profitability standard with higher tipping fees for the life of the landfill, the preference from our perspective is certainly the higher tipping fees, and that if the market is a much higher at a much higher level due to lack of competition, that's fine by us.
Mm-hmm. And their annual report speaks to that too. If you go to the Republic's annual report, they always talk about meeting margins, increasing pricing for disposal.
Yeah, and that is totally opposite the City of Dallas's approach. Yes. And the City of Dallas with their McComas landfill, and they've been on record, they said that their goal is to keep the price, the tipping price below market, because they want to keep the region's cost to throw away waste low. That's completely opposite the approach that we're under. So two balances there.
Well, I guess long-term, our responsibility is to the residents of Farmers Branch who actually own that landfill, and making sure that it's available to them, because the day that it's not, it will be a pretty significant hit to residents when they have to start paying for garbage to be taken elsewhere. So, okay.
DFW landfill's got one more year life left, so they've already kind of cut their volume in half. We thought we'd get a lot of that. We have not. And that's the reason, because of the price we've kept in terms of the tipping fee. So it's going somewhere else where it's cheaper. But for our location, at some point in time, we expect they'll come back, but they're going to pay the tipping rate we want them to pay.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. First of all, the last year's consumption, airspace consumption, 858,628 cubic yards. Where were we 5 years ago? I'm going to assume that, our population has increased significantly, our businesses have increased. It seems logical, maybe wrong, but it seems logical that with the population increases coming in the areas around us, that there would also be a significant increase in the amount of space over time. We're using last year's number, to get to 44 years, and last year's number, we may never hit that number again.
In 5 years, I can get you, I don't have the data at the top of my head, but I can go pull up from the website where our annual report is, and I can give you what we had for 2015. I can get that for you. I just don't have it off.
And the DFW landfill?
Same, you can find that too online.
But that's closing down, correct?
Yes, but 5 years ago, that thing was taking in 8,000 tons per day or something like that, some ridiculous amount of waste they were taking in over there.
Yeah, so you've got to assume that that's going to go somewhere.
Right.
If we get 50% of that, that's going to adjust our numbers significantly.
Well, that's what I was just talking to Councilman Lynn about. They've already cut their volume in half. They're down to about 2,500 tons per day, and that's it.
Yeah.
We thought a lot of it would come to us. It hasn't because of the price we're charging. Our tipping fee is not, we're not lowering it to get folks in. We still have plenty of volume coming in to support. It's going to the general fund, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And do that, okay. And then I think some of the other things that we're overlooking is, one is, it requires Louisville approval. Last time we went through Louisville, they held us up like train robbers. What? They did. And it would be naive, I think, for us to assume that if we went back to them and asked for anything, that would not happen again. Plus the cost of getting through the TCEQ, while it may not be as hard, nothing seems to, from my experience, limited.
And that's why I emphasize the structure. If you put a structure out there, we're going through
Yeah.
P&Z and their city council again.
Yeah. And then what would the loss of airspace be if we built a structure there to house a mulching, we talk about a $300,000 cost for the pad and all of that, but that would also take space too, right? That, I guess maybe at the end you could spend more money taking the pad down and, and reusing it, but it just seems.
Yeah, the bigger concern in that is the actual usage of dirt, on-site soil. As time goes on, we're going to need as much soil as we can find out there. Currently, it's a soil deficit at Camelot, which means at some point in time, some folks are going to have to pay to bring soil in for cover. So using up 100,000 cubic yards, whatever it may be, for building a pad is not something I'd like to do at this point in time.
Yeah.
If we got a huge soil project in, like some huge highways being constructed, we'll be chasing those every time they come out. But that's kind of a concern too. As we build this pad in that floodplain, we really are going to need that soil in the future to cover trash, to keep the landfill operational, trying to keep the operational costs down.
It would just seem to me like as we go down the path that the free market will take care of it as the cost of, my expectation is in 10 years, it'll be double the cost, to utilize the landfill or close to it. And as cities start looking at this and they start looking at their costs, redirecting to a mulching service or, a third party would be something that will become, just financially a requirement because it will be used, and even that mulch will probably over time become more valuable, through the process as well. So to me, it seems like it's a lot of squeezing and not much juice, a lot of effort and a lot of work. It's going to create, maybe minimal, but some extra burden on staff and process and one more thing to track. And, I think the moves that we've made to, for mulching in our own town and to save, I think cities, I think it's been great for us, but I think other cities over the not too distant future, as prices rise, will be forced to make that same decision or a similar decision. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Got it.
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Driscoll?
Yes, thank you. Being new on council, appreciate the report, Shane. And my first reaction is it just seems from your presentation and questions and discussion that at least in the near term, here in the foreseeable future, is really not feasible for us to proceed with the mulching and that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rotano?
I think everybody's kind of said pretty much what I would say. I think that we definitely need to relook at this, need more information. To my colleagues' points, I think that now may not be the right time, but hopefully maybe we can find a more innovative approach. And I think, I'm not really even sure, and maybe for those listening, really getting a good idea of kind of the pros and cons associated with this when it comes back again, because I'm sure it will. Just to give everybody the understanding of what, the benefits of something like this opposed to some of the potential repercussions, i.e. capacity and those types, and cost. So I think my colleagues have kind of said pretty much everything that, or asked the same type of question. So thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Lynn, for bringing this up. So hopefully we can find something in the future that may work for us.
Thank you. Councilmember Norwood.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Everybody's pretty much said most of it. I was surprised at the 35,000 thing. That's just a lot of money for each month. What volume did you guarantee them, or did you provide them to that they came up with such a large figure?
That's just what they need based on their staffing. And so grinders, you won't ever hear me telling you we need to have a grinder for the City of Farmers Branch just because they are so expensive to operate. Anytime you see those large tub grinders operating, those are very expensive pieces of machinery to operate. You're constantly replacing teeth. So to have a couple of those going all the time, doing nothing but chipping wood, my guess is the majority of that's going to just machine maintenance as much as anything else, as much as their staffing operation. But I don't know what volume it would take to get to that. But I know we had one in Lubbock, and that thing sat parked most of the year just because we couldn't afford to keep the thing running.
All right. So you said on your presentation that Farmers Branch and Capel were the two?
Capel is one. I know they have a diversion program currently, and Republic has that contract. So they looked at what volume that was generating. They're taking that probably to a living earth facility currently. Otherwise, just other cities have not pushed for that yet. Texas, there not being a mandate to divert anything at this point in time. Some states have mandates, so should there be a legislative mandate, I can see this all of a sudden become a huge issue for us. All of a sudden, folks are going to push for that because it's an easy way to get your tonnage and meet that diversion goal. But at this point in time, the state of Texas, I haven't seen any indication that we're moving in that direction in terms of diversion requirements.
Okay. I wonder if any of our local legislators would be willing to push that up, kind of like they did when they prevented us from moving forward with our permit. The last question I had has to do with the point of interest for me. Are we still on the hook for the storm material diversion?
No, sir, I took that out of their contract with Louisville. I would not allow that to go through because one big storm would have filled up a cell out there.
Right.
So no, we struck that.
That's out of there. Good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because that would have had the potential to take up a huge
Yes, sir.
portion, so. Okay, thanks, Shane. You're doing great. I would say I agree with Councilman Lynn that we need to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of this because somebody may come along that says that has a better way or can operate more efficiently than Living Earth. So.
Or you get one big city like Carrollton that wants to do it. Now all of a sudden you probably got the volume to support the site too. So there's a couple different ways to get there. But we'll keep looking.
Well, this is a spurious comment, but you'd think that Louisville would be interested in it, given their penchant for charging $100 per tree. So.
Sir, they wouldn't get any host fee money if they did that. So.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, everyone's said everything that needs to be said. So appreciate the presentation, all the insight. We got a lot of work to do on that one, but I guess we'll keep charging forward and hopefully find a way to maybe see something make its way across the goal line. But we will move on to A3, provide a report on crime trends and action plans. Chief, the floor is yours.
So I should be good still?
You should be good.
Okay.
Yeah, you should be good.
Voila. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, David Hale, Police Chief. I'm going to provide you with a presentation today on crime trends and then some of the action plans that we're putting in place or have already put in place in order to help impact the rise that we're seeing in the crime trend. So this first slide is, as you can see, the number your eye goes to is that from 2016 to 2020, we've seen about a 9% overall increase in crime. And then I provided you with some pretty conservative population estimates at the bottom also that'll kind of give you an idea of our growth. So there are three. Let me back up just a second. So we changed the way that by law, we had to change the way that we report crime. So originally it was UCR, Uniform Crime Reporting, and this is dictated by the FBI. And so we had a deadline in order to do it. We met it, we were about a year and a half before we even had to do it. So whenever you see in some of the graphs, there's going to be some blanks. The reason for those blanks is because NIBRS, which is National Incident-Based Reporting, is a little bit different, and it got into a little bit more detail, and so that's why you'll see some places where it says NA. So under NIBRS, crimes against persons, crimes against property, and crimes against society are the three major categories. So this slide looks at those three categories and just kind of gives you a broad overview of those three categories and what we're looking at. And so on the total crimes against persons, and whenever I say COVID sensitive, crime has a lot of things that actually impact the reason crime trends, do what they do. You've got the economy, who's all out of work, what other societal issues are going on. And so I'm reluctant to always say, yep, that's absolutely the reason that's happening, because it's a very difficult formula to figure out. And so I left it at COVID sensitive, looking at crimes against persons. But whenever you look at this, you can imagine, and I'll get into more detail on, actually, I'll break down each one of these categories. But crimes against persons is going to be your assaultive offenses. And so, a lot more folks at home. We kind of had a rough year, so I think to say that COVID didn't have anything to do with that would be a mistake. Our total crimes against property, as you can see, they are up also. And that is one of the actual violent crime in Farmers Branch as compared to, a lot of other cities that you're seeing on the news, the major metropolitan areas. That's, it's not that we don't have any, but property crime is the one that challenges us the most. And then, and total crimes against society, this looks like a great number because it's down. But the issue with this is that a lot of the work that we do makes that one go up, because those are our drug arrests. And so with COVID, the fact that Dallas County, for several months wouldn't even accept a prisoner unless they were basically a danger to society because of the COVID outbreak, it challenged us, and we had to put on the brakes. Also, we have our own facility, and we're responsible for the people in there, and so I had to set a limit on the number of people that we could bring into our facility for that very same reason. Yeah, they might be under arrest, but they're still under our care, and so we have to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So on our crimes against persons, as you can see, the good news is no homicides in 2020. We had 2 back in 19, and 3 was an unusual year. 2018 was an unusual year. Our sexual assaults, and this I will attribute some to population growth, and just for your sake and for the folks that are watching, these aren't people crawling through somebody's window and they had no idea who it was. The majority of these are acquaintances, people meeting online, people meeting at the bar, and things happen after that, and we end up taking a report on them. And then there's other offenses as well that are in a category, and just to give you an example of those, and this is how NIBRS sets it up, and that leaves a lot to the imagination, but usually so other offenses, examples of those are statutory rape and incest, which you don't see a whole lot of that. So this next slide, and again, the crimes against persons is aggravated assault. That's a pretty significant increase, and again, this includes domestic violence. As part of that, we've got a lot more people at home, a lot of pressure on people to deal with, incomes and loss of jobs and all of that. And so, I'm comfortable saying that is COVID sensitive. The same with simple assault as well. I believe that is going to be a COVID-sensitive issue as well. And also some of our growth is going to be mixed in as you have more people. You're going to go up a little bit. And so other crimes against persons, this one's up, and what these are an example of these is manslaughter, justifiable homicide, kidnapping, and child pornography. And believe it or not, the majority of these cases are actually us working the internet and taking predators off the street. We have a detective who specializes in doing this. He has all the forensic training to review computers and people's personal devices, and he's even done some work on a task force as well to help. And so we do our part in trying to keep the predators off the internet because we know our kids are on it. So on our crimes against property, the good news is robbery is down. I'm not sure that this has anything to do with COVID. It may just be a trend. The other good news is I think this one is COVID sensitive as well as burglary of residence. You've got more people working from home. People are less likely to want to have to make that encounter. So that's one of those impacts. Burglary of a building. These are opportunities. You've got more businesses who are working from home, and so therefore you've got a few more empty buildings. I think that one could be considered COVID sensitive as well. On our auto theft, this one is one that we're really battling right now. As you can see, there's something that's going on with there's a new process that the criminals, they keep reinventing ways when we stop them. Is there's something that's called an ECM. It's an electronic control module. It's this little computer that you can buy for $125 on the internet, and you buy that. It comes pre-programmed, and the biggest problem we're having is with GMC and Chevrolet products. They lay down on the ground. They're able to poke the hood, get it to open. They take that ECM, pull it out, take the one they bought off the internet, stick it in, and it starts right up for them. Button start. And so that's something that we know that we're dealing with, and trying to figure out, is there something that we can come up with to help? Because at one point it was and it still is, tailgates get stolen because of the cameras and all that. We've got some pretty simple ways to help combat that we do through our crime prevention office. We're trying to figure out how to come up with something on this one to see if there's a way we can keep them from popping the hood. There we go. Sorry about that. So here are specifically some of our more drilled down on our property crime. BMV is also counted in that same category. We've got more vehicles in town. I mean, that's bottom line. We've got more parked vehicles in town. So I think that's probably having some impact. I don't know that COVID has much to do with that. Shoplifting, again, we've got a kind of a depressed economy, a lot of people out of work. I think that that is probably something that may be influenced by, current environmental issues going on. Other theft, which is good news, those are down right now. And these are things like we have problems whenever our lawn services come out to cut people's yards. And when they do that, they leave their equipment parked in the street. And if it's not nailed down, a lot of times they'll take the weed eater, anything that's not locked up. And so those are some of the other thefts that we deal with. But I think some of those opportunities are not nearly as prevalent right now. So criminal mischief and vandalism. So this is going to include your offenses. This is also going to be your graffiti as well. And so we've seen an uptick in that as well. Also, just to note, is in under criminal mischief. So when somebody breaks the window out of a car, and then maybe they get spooked off, and they don't do any damage to the steering column, a lot of times we know what they're in there for. They want the car. But by the letter of the law, looking at all the facts we have available to us, is that a lot of times will become a criminal mischief because we really don't know what the absolute intent was. And so those are included in here as well. Well, I think I've got lost in here. All right, we just covered that one. There we go. All right, crimes against property, other categories. These are actually, the fire department investigates these, but we assist them with a lot of this work as well whenever they need our assistance. We've had one this year, and that was actually somebody that set their car on fire. Forgeries are down. That's actually probably pretty good news. Fraud is down, but I will tell you that one of the things that we are seeing is some of the online scam stuff is really shot through the roof. We see a lot of, we talk to a lot of people in regards to this they're receiving information, via email, phone calls about, people trying to scam them out of their money. And most people, are pretty savvy to it, but there's some out there that do get victimized. And so that's something that we get a lot of phone calls on as well. So drugs and narcotics violations, again, this is one of those categories. It's down, it looks good, but this is also driven by us as well. And so as I was sharing with you earlier, the fewer arrests we make, as we make more arrests for these, it makes those numbers actually go up. So that is not as hopeful as it looks. Now, this is one of the new NIBRS, the drug equipment violations. This is something that we captured just for our own personal purposes, but it was not reportable under UCR. And so that's why you're not seeing any numbers in those previous years, because that's when we made the transition to NIBRS. And drug equipment violations are, we stop a car, they may not have the narcotic in there because they've already used it, or for whatever, but they have paraphernalia associated with using it, and so pipes and so on and so forth. So that's what that is. Weapons law violations, that's UCW, unauthorized carrying of a weapon, somebody that carrying a prohibited weapon, somebody who is violating their license to carry, which is pretty rare, but that will fall under this category. And then other crimes against society are, this is a kind of a area that takes in a lot. It's kind of like one of the others that fill in. And let me see if I can find some examples of that. So the reason these are so low is because it's betting and wagering, sports tampering, and gambling. So we don't run across a whole lot of that. And so this slide is specifically set up that I felt comfortable saying that COVID did have an impact on these areas. And the APALs, and I know that's one of those terms that it's like, what in the world is that? So it's apprehension by a peace officer without a warrant. It's not considered to be an arrest, but we do take person into custody. It's a person who is a danger to themselves or others, and these are our mental health calls. And so these have significantly gone up with the pandemic and everything else that's going on. So we're seeing a lot more of that. We're even having some challenges with the facilities being full, and we'll get a notice from the facility saying, hey, you're going to have to divert, you can't bring it here. We have other options, but it just takes our folks further away. And the way the law is written, it says we are required by law to use the closest facility unless it's been diverted and it's full. Another good news item is because there's just fewer people commuting back and forth to work, accidents are down. And again, burglary of a residence, which we discussed a little bit earlier, a lot of people at home, so that's down. And we did mention, I did mention that aggravated assault, I was comfortable saying that had, was COVID sensitive as well. So what are we going to do about it? So our action plans is currently we're in the process. We've already signed a contract and we're beginning work on 2 new fixed license plate readers. One at McCune and Midway and the other one at Luna and Mercer Parkway. We're going to use increased use of unmarked vehicles in hotspot areas, and the purpose behind this is, yes, we do like the deterrent of having marked vehicles, but we also like to catch them. And it's easier for us to catch them and put them out and move them and at least get them in the process for a little while, even though a lot of times they're back out and pretty quickly. And, that's one of the issues with that is that there's some different philosophies in Dallas County in regards to theft cases. I know that I shared with, and you've seen in the news that it's just like, well, you can steal up to this amount, and if it was something you really needed, for your life maintenance, then there's a good chance that they won't get prosecuted for it. They'll go through some type of diversion, and so I can't say that doesn't kind of take away the deterrent impact of being arrested for a theft. So. But we still want to catch them in nonetheless. I can't help what they do. I can control what we do, and we're going to put them in jail. So, one other thing is covering beat officer in the absence on the west end during night hours. And so, when we make an arrest, we have a lunch. Somebody needs to take a break. A lot of times, there's only one officer in each one of the beats, and so if especially the arrest scenario, they're all the way back on the other end of town, to deal with that. And so we've started backfilling the position on the west end with somebody else to move them over to try to keep that from being vacant, because it doesn't take long for the criminals to move in on us. We're assigning additional officers to hotspot areas based on crime data, increased use of foot and bike patrols in the parking lots and garages, and ramping up traffic stops in the higher crime areas. The other narrative that we really need to push is to work with our community, especially our apartment communities, and trying to, get the community to help us. And I know we can't just do it by ourselves. We need the community's help. We need their eyes and ears as force multipliers for us. And so increasing communication with apartment management and hotspot neighborhoods regarding trending crime and crime prevention via our city messaging. Also, we've had a program for quite some time that's called SafeCam. But we want to increase our messaging on signing up for that PD program that allows you to register your Ring or any other security camera you have. Doesn't give us the ability to look at your stuff, but we know that you have it. That way we know that we can come and knock on your door if we think maybe you have some information that might be beneficial to solving a crime. Currently, we have 75 people signed up for this program, but the more the better. And also, we want to research the cost and value of mobile fixed security camera platforms. I know these construction sites, you'll see these camera systems set up, and we want to look into seeing, if those would be beneficial. as well, or if we have a neighborhood where, you know, we have a hot spot and we can talk to those citizens, and if there's some way that the way their neighborhood is set up that they would all agree to having, you know, a camera for that neighborhood, possibly finding out ways to go about maybe funding some of those if we can find, you know, a neighborhood that is willing to do that. Some will, some won't, but, you know, just making the offer is, you know, you can't get it if you don't ask. This next thing that I want to show you with and wrap up is this is on our city website. This link is. It's on the PD page. It's under PD, online reports. And then you click on the view map of offenses. And this is a program that allows any citizen, anybody, anytime to come and look at what's going on in their neighborhood. It is, you can go through here and all you have to do is find Farmers Branch. And you go to your date range, and I'm going to go back 6 months and look from June. Oh. Hey. All right, what's going on with that? I don't think August of 2023 is going to do any good. I don't know why it's doing that. I'm not clicking on it. Let's see if I can get this mouse to work. Oh, that does it too. As soon as I touch it. Come on. There we go. And then you can come down here and you can filter these events. You can take and look at, anything that maybe you have a particular interest in, or you can hit select all. And then it'll give you all of those categories. And so you can see here, this is, Farmers Branch proper, the older part of Farmers Branch. And then I do want to point out that you don't see nearly as many of the little squares in our city as you do. And whenever you hover over one of these, like burglary, these over here are actually in Addison. So if you click on it, you can see what the offense is. Same for our city. But all of these clusters along here, these are Addison. This is Addison. And then, of course, you'll see what happens on the Dallas side of the highway. These are all Dallas offenses through here. And you have to be careful and when you look at them, because just because it is sitting over the line in Farmers Branch, whenever you hover on it, there's a theft that looks like it's that one actually is. That one's Farmers Branch. But some of them, because if there's a huge cluster, you'll see that it might set over the line, but you have to click on it to make sure it's not in another city. So this is a great tool for our community. You can look at any of these. You can look at these at any time, and it's 24 hours updated every 24 hours at midnight. So it's pretty much real time. And so with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you have.
First off, Chief L, thank you for your presentation. I know that oftentimes in the face of adversity, it leads people to seek desperation, which sometimes often leads to crime. And just want to thank you and the entire department for all you're doing to keep our city safe and to keep a lot of these clusters outside of our city, as you kind of see on this map. But Councilmember Norwood, I know this is something you brought up, so I'll let you go first.
Chief L, thanks for that presentation, very informative, and you know, you can see from the map what a great job the Farmers Branch Police Department does in keeping us safe. The reason I originally asked for this was I kept getting reports of car break-ins and things stolen. I had people in my district who had lawn displays, you know, the blow-up lawn displays stolen. Yes. And it led me to start thinking, you know, is that people will start to feel unsafe. They can't park their car. They can't leave it, you know, alone. And it was encouraging to me to see that we're not seeing the home break-ins. It's mainly things that are outside of the home. And so I think that's encouraging. And I like the actions that you proposed to take, or I guess you've already implemented to take. And so my main reason for asking for this was is there anything more we can do? I mean, we funded the 2 license plate readers, but do we need 2 more above that? Would that help? Do we need, do we have a sufficient, we did the 1 beat on the west side, do we need 2 beats on the west side? You know, and so that we can start thinking through these things, especially as the budget cycle's coming up this summer.
Sure.
And so that was really my purpose in asking for this is, you know, I think, I probably speak for everybody here, but we want to give you the tools to continue the work and to keep our citizens as safe as possible and to protect our properties, our homes, and our livelihoods. And so that's my purpose in this. And so I'll throw it back to you. Is there anything that you thought, well, I'm not going to put that on the list because I don't have money for that, or, you know, anything along those lines that you could think of, because we'd really like to know so we can start considering how we do get those things funded.
Sure. No, I think we're doing a good job of incrementally, you know, and realistically putting things in place with each budget. Again, my budget was bigger this year than it was last year. I've got these cameras going in, and, you know, in a conversation with Charles as well, talking about the potential on some of these camera projects is actually finding some funding and some other programs to possibly, you know, if we get takers on that, to be able to do that. I think technology is probably going to be the way for us to go. Technology and collaboration are the things that probably will serve us best into the future, because policing is, you know, it's changing, and in some areas it does need to change. And so I think how we go about doing it, and I think that community communication, we've got to get buy-in from especially our apartment communities to say, hey, you're going to have, you know, yes, we have a job to do, but we can't do it by ourselves, and we are growing, and so with growth comes, you know, the challenges that come with it. And so I need your help, and I think we can do a better job of doing that, and we've already outlined that with our crime prevention officer. He's in the process of contacting every apartment complex that we have and saying, look, here's your crime, here are some of the challenges that you have, and these are, you know, maybe some things that we can do. Do we need to put up lock, take, and hide signs? Do you need to have a crime watch meeting, even though they might not be in the mandatory crime reduction program? That shouldn't have any impact on that. We should offer that service regardless. And so we're in the process of doing it, and I would really like to see if our technology leveraging and us collaborating with our community stakeholders, I would really, you know, see if really ramping that up is going to, you know, help us meet that mission. As far as, you know, I need this gadget today, you know, I think we're incrementally doing what we need to do to keep moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Just one comment on that statement is that sometimes incremental is great, and sometimes we need to put a push. And so, you know, everybody up here knows I love my sewers, right? So, and we have been pushing to get the sewers line because it has a direct impact on reducing our wastewater rates. And so I would say the same thing to you, is that sometimes maybe we need to do a push. And, you know, so think more about that, and I think as you get your community input, especially on placement of these security cameras and stuff like that, it may be that, that pops up as opportunities to put these cameras in strategic locations. The last thing I'll do, and I'll turn it back, is there was a thread on Nextdoor, I guess, his last couple of days about somebody witnessed shoplifting at our Walgreens. And the upshot of it was that they didn't know what to do. They're watching it and they're like, this is happening, and then they see people get in the car and drive off, and they didn't get a license number and they didn't call anybody, and it was like, I think that's another opportunity for us. If you witness something, not everybody, wants to dial 911, but I think, what's the number for the non-emergency line? How do we get somebody to respond quickly when they see suspicious cars, or they see, people driving slow in the neighborhood or down alleys and that kind of thing? So we might want to just up that community or that communication also.
Very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilmember Rotana.
Thank you. I too was very interested in this report, and so thank you so much for putting it together. And I actually was asking for a heat map for the west side, and your team member pointed me to the map. So I enjoyed playing with it for a while, trying to figure out how to extrapolate the data. So thank you so much. I think it's a really great tool. I do have a couple of questions, and this may be something that would be useful, at least it would be to me, is maybe every quarter getting a heat map of statistics, only because in planning as I plan to establish neighborhoods, especially 3 around B Street area, one of the things that my neighbors have told me that, they're excited about starting these neighborhood associations, but, what are some of the things that they would want to see? And crime is one of them. And also how to report it, to your point. What are the avenues they have right now? I think your plan is great as to what are some of the things that you're wanting to do, but I think there's a lack of avenues to communicate with our residents. And so hopefully by creating some of these new neighborhood associations and these community captains, it'll give us an avenue for those neighborhoods that may not be a part of an HOA to be able to disseminate the resources and information. And so I'm really excited about that and look forward to working with you on ways to engage our community members, especially with the Unidos program that I know we've talked about, and I know it's been a little difficult with COVID, but I hope that once we get to, I hate to say normal, because normal is never going to be the same, but we're able to leverage those officers too, because one thing I see in the healthcare field is the fact that you're right, that there has been an uptake, not just here, but all over the state and the country related to assault within the household and those types of things. And a lot of that has created these mental behavioral health issues also for our children. So how can we leverage programs like Unidos to talk to those individuals so they're not afraid to call the police? They're not afraid to do these things. And I think, as you know, I'm a huge advocate for mental health. So I would love to kind of work with you on ways to create some type of, I don't want to say collateral, because it really is how to communicate better with our residents in certain ways, especially around this issue. And so I would love to continue this conversation around the mental health and finding ways to educate folks and not be afraid to make those calls, because that's something that we see on the healthcare side too, and it just continues to increase. And so I know I'll be monitoring that from the legislative side, so hopefully we can work together to advocate on behalf of those policies as well, and increasing mental health access to some of our residents. The other thing I wanted to comment on is related to the apartments. So as you know, there has been a huge uptick in theft in my side of town, and I want to know, and this may be something that may be outside of your purview, but working with staff, is there a way for us to leverage those apartment communities and find a public-private partnership program where we can assume part of the cost of cameras, because or if there's a way for us to ensure that any new apartment that's being built, that they do put cameras on those garages, because there was one instance where there was a few thefts in one night and there were no cameras there. And so I know that some cities have public-private partnerships where if there's a high theft area, like for a gas station, what they'll do is they'll split the cost of the camera, so that way there's buy-in from both, right? And so I would love to explore something like that, or even if there's a way for us to require that any new apartment community have cameras in those parking garages, because that has been a huge issue. Even just last weekend, there was a car on stilts, you know, and so it's just been something that I know has been an issue on the west side. I'm glad that we have a beat there now. I'm glad that we have coverage, and there may have to be a 5-year plan to maybe potentially add a new beat or more officers in that area as the density increases, as we know it will, with the addition of more Billingsley properties and so on. So anyhow, I know that's one point that I wanted to make, and I don't know who from staff would be best to kind of help explore that possibility, either with a new build or a public-private partnership for cameras. But I love that you're already starting to think about those types of things. And the other question I had, it was somewhat related, is when it comes to an incident, if, let's say you're at for example, a parking garage at an apartment, and you have 5 burglaries in one night, does that count as one incident because it was at one location, or does it count as 6?
It used to count as 5, but it can now under NIBRS as 1 because it's one criminal episode. If you can prove it was the same person, the same MO, but you know, and have the 5. So yeah, that's a challenge. But the good news is that there's a difference between that's how we're required to report for national standards. Whenever they decide they want to, you know, that's how they want to receive the information.
Sure.
But our personal data, which is so much more broad than what NIBRS is, then we know that's happening.
So, and the reason I asked that is because as I was having a meeting with my residents, and I was wanting to give, you know, statistics, especially in relation to Mercer and the development. But when I was looking at the map and going through the website, the map you just showed us, I wasn't sure if those incidences would be in what we just talked about. Is it that one incident, or are you all inputting the data so it would count as 5? And I think because that creates kind of a discrepancy, if you will, where it may say, oh, well, for example, the Brickyard in 2020, there were, you know, 6 theft incidences, but in reality, there were really 30, because it just depends on how you count the data.
Right.
So for that map, are you counting the 1, or would you counting the 5?
That map is not NIBRS dependent because it's not required to be.
Okay, so that one is all inclusive. So you would count the 6 if it was in one night as
Yes.
opposed to the 1. Okay. Yeah, because I know that's been an issue in a lot of other cities. So I'm glad that's not the case, because I do wanted to make sure that individuals understand the brevity if it is something that's happening multiple times. So I think that, you know, I already talked about the communications issues. I think we really need to try to figure out ways of communicating certain things to our residents and getting them involved and engaged. So when it comes to the communications, the mental health, and the apartments, and the cameras, I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation moving forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, sorry, one last thing. We talked about during when we had the mayor's task force around the mental health assistance program. Can you give us a quick update on that?
So on December 12th, so we've kind of backed up and regrouped. I've got money in my budget just to go out and hire somebody, but in trying to work with our other cities that we partner with, because we realize that, you know,
A regional approach?
it's
yes.
a regional approach. So on December the 12th, the city of Carrollton, on behalf of all 4 of our communities, put in for the Dallas County grant. And the last update that I know of is that they were meeting, I think it was January 12th, to have a post application question.
Briefing?
Yes, briefing. And Rex Redden, who's the public safety director in Carrollton, is the one that's done that, and I have not received an update since then.
Okay.
But I can reach out and find out.
Yeah, could you let us know kind of either, it doesn't have to be in study session, but even just a quick email to council kind of where that's going, because I know that's something that a lot of us are really interested in. So thank you, sir. Okay, and now that is all I have.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, thank you, Chief Hale, for that report. I listened to every bit of it and read it with interest, and as has been echoed by a couple of my colleagues, my hat's off to you and the outstanding work that your entire police force does on a regular basis for us here in the city. And particularly of note were the decrease in robberies and home burglaries. And I just had a couple of comments and maybe a question. Following up with Councilmember Retana's point about mental health, member from the police task force, we discussed that back in the summer. And for the individual, you said that Carrollton is looking to hire for the 4 cities. Is that someone who's going to work with police officers, or also work with police officers and the community when they get calls that are clearly more of a mental health nature?
Yeah, good question, and let me back up a little bit too, because I think I ran that together a little bit. So I currently have money in the budget for us, Farmers Branch, to hire somebody. However, what came up is that we wanted to kind of take a broader look at how much of a problem do we have in all 4 of our communities. And so the grant that I spoke of is a grant that would fund a full-scale study of mental health issues in all 4 of our communities, and it would be coming through Dallas County. And so that way we kind of start from a point of knowing absolutely what each of our communities' issues are, and then moving forward, we would be able to, leverage all 4 cities to come up with a solution. Do we need, licensed counselors? Do we need licensed social workers? What do we need, and what will that look like? So we kind of step back a little bit until we can get that study done, hoping that we get the grant, and then that way we're not kind of going in, because this is new for us. This is a whole new area for law enforcement. We've been dealing with it forever, but this new approach is new. So I wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Well, I also would look forward to, hearing follow-up from that, and how we can all kind of continue to work together, particularly on that side of things. And then I had a question on crimes against society. I don't think we have a problem with this, but we hear all the time, or from time to time, hit and run accidents in different cities and drag racing, and often it leads to other accidents and deaths. Are those things that you're seeing any kind of increase of at all? And would that come in the crime against society category if we did?
I don't think it would come under NIBRS specifically, because those aren't part of the categories. But I will tell you that from a community perspective of what we're keeping track with is that we are having issues with the drifting racers and the people who are wanting to take over intersections. And so my team just met with the City of Dallas Police Department, and there were over 25 agencies represented at this meeting. We shared intelligence on specific, people that we think are ringleaders to try to help identify them in the vehicles they drive. And so we're starting to move down the road of gaining a lot more intelligence, but right now we're pushing them from one city to the next. Displacement does count. So if we can move them on back to somewhere else, then we do that. But it is becoming problematic, and it's not just in Dallas. It's in Dallas County. It's all over. It's all over the Metroplex, and it's also all over the state.
Mm-hmm. But it is a growing concern also for us.
It is, and we're monitoring to see if there's going to be any legislation that's going to come out with all the bills being introduced, to see if there's anything at the state level that's going to bring us some help on having a little bit more leverage. Because the problem is that catching these folks is really difficult, and I have to weigh out the risk of stopping somebody for a traffic stop and chasing them, and the chase is going to stop. We're not going to catch them. So we've got to figure out something else. I know there's one Dallas councilman who's really pushing to get some state law that would say, hey, we can seize your car if you're there, just if you're participating. And so, but I'm keeping an eye on that. I haven't seen anything introduced yet. I don't know if he's going to be able to find anybody who's willing enough to take on that cause, because it's a property rights kind of issue, and Texas is really big on their property rights. So we'll see how that works. But we are monitoring it.
Thank you. I had one other question. Almost on a daily basis, no matter time of day or night, it's not just during rush hour, I encounter someone running a red light at going north, usually in Josie and Golfing Green at that intersection. And I might be on Golfing Green waiting for the light to change. I get a green light, clearly all the traffic on Josie has a red, and I'll see one or two vehicles just fly through the intersection. This kind of ties in back with Councilmember Norwood's comment. When I see something like that, I mean, what can I do as, Joe citizen?
Well,
And it's obviously dangerous, and I know it's going to lead to some bad accidents one day.
Absolutely, and your input is so important again, and this comes back, kind of ties into the community's commitment to work with us to be able to do it, to make Farmers Branch as safe as we can. If you see it, give us a call. If you don't want to give us a call, you can use the online notice system. If it's not something immediate, it's like, hey, I'm noticing that at this intersection, because I travel it frequently, that we've got some issues with red light runners. And give us a kind of a time frame where you're seeing it most, and we'll assign our traffic officers to it and to have them sit on it and look at it. Because if we don't know what's happening, which at a particular place and time, then it's hard for us to have somebody there. So your information is invaluable to us.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you. That's all I have. But thank you, Chief Hale.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Baumgartner.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and the first one is kind of unrelated, but the population numbers that we used in 2020 were 35,900, and the county had us at 48,000, and I'm just, it's just more of a question of which is the right number? Right.
So these are the most up-to-date numbers from the Council of Governments, North Central Texas Council of Governments. And yes, I think they're a little bit underestimated. However, they're the static numbers that everybody else is using, in their communities. And so we're hearing these projections, but until I think the census is absolutely, finalized, I would agree that we probably got more folks than what this says, but it's also going to be really speculative on the other side, because I hear 40, 45, 50. It depends on what's going on, and so this is an effort to say, hey, yeah, we know we're growing, but these are the most recent validated numbers that we have until the census is totally finalized.
As long as Dallas County is giving us money, I think we should adopt their number. They're prorating it. Anyway, the second question I had was on shoplifting. Mm-hmm. And I recall when I first got on council that we talked about the fact that Walmart was leaving and that there was a Walmart effect on shoplifting that was going to reduce shoplifting significantly. Did that happen the year before? It seemed like Walmart was still here when I was on council in 2015.
Yeah, it did. I mean, we saw a significant, whenever they moved across into Dallas, we did see a significant drop for that year, as I recall. So it did have it because there was a major retailer. But you have to remember that we've had more people move back in, and although they may not be, as big or have quite the volume, you still have a major box store that took its place there. And so we still deal with it. And, and you're seeing more of it in the convenience stores as well, because especially the famous kids running in and grabbing a 12-pack and running back and getting out of there as quick as they can.
Yeah. Now, Dallas County is not prosecuting under 750. They're not prosecuting. Are we still arresting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can't impact what their policies are, but I am in control of what we do. And it's the same with marijuana as well. We still arrest for marijuana. And it's just like whether you choose to prosecute is your business.
Good. I like that. And then my last question, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, but the apartment buildings, we have this high crime program. And I think the last time we talked about it was maybe a year or so ago, and we had a couple of properties that were in that program, and I know there were requirements with the program of additional lighting, cameras, on-site security. Do we have, do we have an updated status on that? Or, and if you don't have it today, I mean, you could send it on an email and update it, but.
Actually, for once, I said, you know what, I bet I'm going to get asked about that, so I have. So I have so that's a program that re-ups in January because it's on a calendar year. And so we did it, we had 2 complexes that were in the program last year. And I can bring this back, but just to answer your question, we had 2 in it last year. It was Lyft and it was Valwood and Ventana at Valwood.
Yeah.
And they were a repeat offender. They did hire security. They put in security cameras. They had appealed that, if you recall, to the to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and so that was all hashed out there. They did what they were asked, and so the numbers that I have for this year is they're out. They managed to bring their numbers down with the things that they did, and Lyft is also out too. And I've got 1 that went back in for this year, and that's. And I don't know that they've been notified yet, but we're working on it. That's Villa Creek and London Villa, that's a new one.
Yeah.
So, but it's just 1.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, as we checked on those periodically, I'm assuming we did.
Yes.
Did we find any, breakdown where they were supposed to have somebody on security and we showed up and they didn't? And
Most of our meetings were with the property management. The problem with the way that the security works is it says that you have to have it. It doesn't say how much you have to have, how often it has to be in there. The ordinance doesn't specify. And so they're using like roving patrols, that come through it, and we work with them and say, look, here's the hours where we're having issues, and so if you can have your personnel be through there during these times, and we've had some success with that as well. And so yes, we do check on. We don't just say, okay, well here. We meet back with them. We have. It's been a little hard with COVID to have our crime watch meetings, but we still, kept up with the management and make sure they're doing what they were supposed to do.
My memory is weak, but it seems like, that when we talk about that, the intent was that they would have 24-hour security, and the idea was. To ensure that. And I thought that, Councilman Norwood, is that the way you remember it, or as we discussed that? Because.
Yeah, I really don't recall, Mike.
Yeah.
But I think there's a possibility that maybe we should take a look at this and tighten it up if it's not.
Yes.
But I'm glad to bring back a full presentation and an update on that.
That's good. Hey, our police and fire, our first responders, it's they're the stars of Farmers Branch, and your leadership, is fantastic, and this is great information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lynn?
In the interest of time, I will be brief. I would like to get an opinion from the city attorney and perhaps the planning director whether we can mandate security cameras as part of new construction to be included in common areas and parking garages moving forward. So if you'll take a look at that and see if we can incorporate that into our ordinance.
Would you, Councilman, would you allow me to piggyback something on that too that I thought about, is that, if we're going to look at doing something like that, I look at what our officers, so they have like this keychain in all of our vehicles. It's probably got 35 fobs on it, and that's to get into all these different complexes. I would like to, us to take a look at, is there a way that we can, use our, some type of system like Opticom, which we have on our vehicles, to activate any gates that we have. I know it's a little late in the game, but, with some of that, because so much of it's already happened. But that was something I would be interested in looking into, because the fobs, like I say, it's just like, okay, which one does this belong to? And it gets a little difficult for them.
certainly. So make note of that. Tina?
Awesome. Chief, thank you very much. I would ask questions, but those usually just create chaos and misinformation, so I'm going to abstain at this time. But we will move on to A4. Really appreciate it. Discuss future agenda items. Councilmember Rotano. Councilmember Norwood.
I have nothing to add.
Councilmember Lynn.
I would like to hear a report or have some discussion with the police chief in regards to paper plates, licenses, and registration stickers, and inspection stickers.
Councilmember Baumgartner.
I think at this time.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. We will. How long is your item? Okay. We will take a recess and come back for the regular session after this, and executive session will be after the council meeting. So, just letting y'all know. We're going to go ahead and recess. It's